Hey, good morning. This is Sonia from An Enthusiastic Reader. I'm here today to do a quick catch-up video with you, what I've been reading, what I will be reading pretty soon, a TV show that I want to recommend, and also a couple of booktuber shout-outs at the end. So let's just go ahead and get started. Here's some books that I just finished reading. The first is Such a Fun Age by Kiley, Reid. I know that Sarah over at Hardcover Hearts didn't love this book, but I actually thought it was a pretty good book for what it was trying to do, which is to write a novel that was semi-comic about race and privilege and what happens when people try and mask who they are. It was just a pretty interesting book to center around a nanny. She's African American and she's taking care of white children, and what happens when she gets kind of accosted when she's babysitting at a mall and there's a video taken, and then the series of events that happens around that video and just around her life as she's watching. She's about 25 and hasn't really figured out exactly what she wants to do yet, and all of her friends around her are starting to get better jobs and more income and can get better apartments. And so I thought it did a good job of creating very memorable characters, and it wasn't my favorite book that I've ever read, but I did enjoy it, and yeah, I would recommend it. It would be a good book club book, I think. The next book I finished is for book club, and we haven't had our meeting yet, so I'm kind of interested to see what will happen when we have the meeting, but it's called Snow White by Donald Barthelme. Snow White by Donald Barthelme. It was written in the early 70s. It's a parody, postmodern deconstruction of the Snow White fairy tale. I found it impenetrable and so frustrating. I couldn't latch on to anything. I didn't know who the characters were. It just jumps around from character to character and scenario to scenario, but you really don't have any idea of what's happening or what the purpose of this deconstruction is. So I feel like I'm not a postmodern literature fan. I don't like things like that. When you read postmodern kind of experimental literature like this, you really have to go in with an open mind. And maybe I'm not in the right mind space for that. It to me is such just a game. It's not anything that's real, and I don't like the writing. I don't find any of the scenarios funny. And let me show you a picture of the book cover that I selected to go with this book. And this is kind of in the line of mass market paperbacks like Myra Breckenridge and other books that were considered maybe X-rated. And it's Snow White with these men who are supposed to be dwarves, I guess, but they never say that. And yeah, it's just a book that is not meant for me. So I feel embarrassed or just guilty that I'm not going into this book like being a good sport, but I'm just not able to do that at this time. So on a happier note, I finished a really fun novel called Kitchens of the Great Midwest by Ryan Stradal. And it is the story of a girl told, and every chapter is told by a different character. So if you don't like multi-perspective novels, I don't think you'll probably like this book. But this girl is born to a couple. The father is Scandinavian, so he's always making weird dishes, but he loves cooking in his native food. And her mother leaves them right away. She's not interested in raising a baby. She doesn't like anything to do with infants, and she doesn't want her life to be conscripted to this little family. So she leaves, and then the father dies. So that's really not giving much away, because the whole story is what happens to this girl after she doesn't have parents anymore. And she grows and ages in each chapter, and you get to see her formation as a chef. So the book is all about food, all different kinds of food, centered in the Midwest, in Des Moines, and there's I think Minneapolis, and there's another city in there. She moves around, or the characters are moving around. And there's poverty, there's drug addiction, there's all kinds of really, timely situations, but it's told with a lot of humor. The characters are endearing. They're not always perfect. They're definitely not perfect, but I really thought this book came together really well to tell this story about this girl. So if you've read it before, I'd like to hear what you thought, but this would be a good book club pick too, and I'm really looking forward to the conversation we have about this book on Sunday. I am still reading The Magus by John Fowles. I just found out in The Magus today that the Magus is a tarot card. Didn't know that until I'm about 600 pages into this book, or 500 pages. This is a really interesting novel. I don't want to talk too much about it because I'm going to talk about it when I'm finished. I would say you just have to put a lot of your own judgments about racists, sexists, people who are anti-homosexual. There's a lot of kind of really icky things happening in the writing of this book, in the perspective of a 25-year-old man who is ensnared in this psychosexual drama with a bunch of people. So I'm 75% done. I'm glad I'm reading it, but I also have a lot of mixed feelings about where we were in the 1970s and where we are now. So I'll talk more about it when I'm done, but it's definitely grabbed me, and I definitely want to find out how it's all going to conclude. I definitely want to find out how it's going to conclude. One book I DNF'd is The Years by Annie Ernaux, and not because I didn't think it was going to be kind of a magical story, and not a magical book about loss, grief, war, people in trauma, but because it does not feel like a good time for me to be reading a book about this. I'm feeling kind of awful about what's happening in the world, and I don't think I can handle whatever's in the book The Years right now. I'm putting it aside, and I do want to try it again sometime, but I started reading it and I just started feeling so sad that I had to put it down. I'm reading The Secret Agent by Joseph Conrad. I chose this for my book club. It's a very short novel based on an incident that truly happened in the late 1800s. There was a bombing. So it's about anarchists in London in the late 1800s. And that's all I know about it so far. It's under 200 pages, and I think it will be interesting to read for book club. I like Joseph Conrad. I don't think that he's as bad as he's been made out to be. And so I decided it would be a good kind of great start for this book club for January of 2020. I got approved for an advanced review copy of Colum McCann's new novel. It's called Apeirogon. And apparently Apeirogon is the term for a polygon having an infinite number of sides and vertices. And I think it's about the Middle East. I'm not sure exactly what it's about, but I'm excited to read it because Let the Great World Spin is one of my favorite novels that I read in the last 10 years. I love that book. And I also got to see Colum McCann MC in a literary event I went to in 2018. And with some friends, we went to this thing in Steamboat Springs, and he was the MC, and he was drinking scotch the entire time. He was quite charming and everything you would want in a host for a literary event. So that's what I've been reading and am reading and will very soon read. I wanted to recommend a TV show. If you have Netflix, we binge watched this show called Cheer over the weekend. It's 6 hours. It's small town Texas that has a junior college, and they are the world champions of cheerleading. As you watch this documentary with all of these young people who are incredibly athletically gifted, they do things that you cannot imagine, but you also get to know their backstory, the sad circumstances that their families have endured, why they're in junior college. You get to meet and appreciate the instructor. Her name is Monica, and she is very, very driven to win the championship. So she's kind of a mixed character or a mixed person in that, you kind of hate her for driving them so hard, but you also kind of love her because she really tries to mother these kids that may not have had great situations. And it's just a peek into small town America in the South that we who don't live there might get a chance to see. So very interesting. We couldn't stop watching it. 6 hours of just, if you like that kind of thing, and we really do, I highly recommend Cheer on Netflix. And finally, I have a couple of shout outs for new channels. They're new to me. And the first is Kim at K. Becker Books. I'm linking a video below where she talks about not her favorite novels of 2019, but very good novels of 2019 that she read. She also has some favorite videos, but I thought this was good, and if you watch it, you kind of get a feel for the books that she really likes. She has a very good on-camera personality, she's funny, and she has great bookshelves behind her, so check her out. And the other book channel that I really like is called The Codex Cantina, and this is two young men who have been reading together apparently for a really long time and decided to start a booktube channel. They are not in the same room as they're taping. So the editing, I mean, this is highly skilled editing, and they have like podcast microphones. Their audio is fantastic, but they talk about a lot of really interesting books, and they love short stories, and they have like the short story project that's going to be happening. And so this last week they read a short story by Nabokov, and so I happen to have the collected stories of Nabokov on my shelf, so I read the story, and we had a little back and forth discussion in their comments about the story, and I really like their vibe. They're very positive, they're really fun, and I think they have a lot to contribute to BookTube and the BookTube community. So please check them out. And yeah, that's all I have for today. This is a quick chat video, and I hope you're all doing well. Please talk to me in the comments below. Subscribe if you're new, and I'd like to see you in the next video. So I'll see you in the next video. Bye.